and we are recording. And then the way I am suggesting that we run this session is that we'll all be together for about, I would say, about an hour maximum. I've got quite a few bits and pieces to go through with you here. A lot of this is going to be about the orientation of the course and how to find things and what to do, and about the assessment for the course. I'd like to have some space at the end for any questions that you've got. So I'll run it for an hour. I'll have some time at the end for any questions that you haven't already asked or don't feel have been answered satisfactorily. And then after that, we'll close the main meeting. I'll stop the recording. And then if any of you have individual questions for me, so things that you're concerned about, issues that you've had particularly with accessing the content of the course, questions about the assessment, individual concerns, we can talk about those at the end of the main session, and I'll turn off the recording for that. So if you want to talk to me one-to-one, or in a kind of smaller group at the end, I'll do that, but that will be at about 3:20, 3:30, something like that. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Aula. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I hope I can do this. There we go. Right. So my intention now, I'm changing that's the wrong thing. Let me try that again. That's just where we are now. These are the problems with sharing screens. Give me a moment and I'll get my head around this. Try that again. Okay, share screen. I want to share this screen. There we go. Okay, so I am now sharing my Aula screen, and this is something like what you will see when you access Aula. So remember, for this module, Introduction to Technology and Education, we are only using Aula. We're not going to be using Moodle. If you go to the Moodle site now, I got a couple of queries from students saying that the Moodle site wasn't open, and I think that might have been confusing. So what I've done is I've opened the Moodle site, but I've put a very clear sign there saying basically we're not using Moodle, we're using Aula, and redirecting people onto Aula. So all of the information that you need for this module will be on Aula, not on Moodle, and Aula will be the way that we communicate with one another throughout this module. There's some pretty straightforward and hopefully fairly intuitive things within Aula. So there's this little welcome section, and if you go into that, it's going to work for me. There we go. So there's a little video from me, more of me if you can face it. That's me just talking about the module, giving you an overview of the module, and you can just click on. I won't do it now because you can watch this in your own time, and you don't want me to talk about watching a video of me. That would be just terribly tedious. So that's there. You can access that whenever you want to. Just clicking on the link there, that will take you into that video. And now we're in week 1. So this is week 1 of the module, and you'll see there's a drop-down list. I've hidden weeks 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. And the only weeks that are visible to you at the moment are week 1 and week 2. Week 2 being next week. This is week 1 where we are now. So within week 1, you've got an introduction to what's happening in week 1, and lots of you have done this, and this is brilliant. Thank you so much. I've given you a little task here to introduce yourselves and to say, tell us what your name is, and tell us a little bit about the technology that you've been using during lockdown. And lots of you have done that, and that's brilliant. It would be great if all of you could engage with that. Just to write a little bit. If you go onto Padlet, you'll see the types of things that others have written, and it's very much a matter of just saying, this is my name, and these are the kinds of things that I have been doing during lockdown and it's with a focus on technology. So how has the use of technology facilitated your day-to-day life during lockdown, because obviously coronavirus has presented us with lots of challenges, and it will be interesting to share how technology may have been useful. Right, I'm briefly going to stop sharing. I'm going to come back to the main group. I'm just going to check before I go any further with everyone here. When I go onto my shared screen, are you all seeing the stuff that I'm sharing? Could you all see my Aula homepage? Can I ask? Thank you, brilliant, lovely. I've got lots of yeses. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you. Enough. That's lovely. Thanks a lot. Good.
Yeah.
Cool. That's super. Thank you. I just wanted to be sure, because I've found myself, at least in one occasion, kind of talking on and realised that my screen had frozen, and everyone was kind of thinking, what on earth is he doing? So great, that's great. I'll carry on sharing my screen then. Good. So this is Aula. So this is the first thing I've talked about, which is the introduce yourself activity. Have a go at that. It's really straightforward. I use a lot of Padlets in modules, and I find that really a useful tool for you to share your ideas, and for me to share information with you, and for me to share answers to the questions you've got. So Padlet is something that I use quite a lot. The next thing in the Aula setup to share here, every week I'll give you some pre-live session activities to do. So I've given you a set of things. I think maybe I've given you a bit too much for this week, and I might shift some of these things around a little bit. But there's a reading here from a book by Selwyn. You can just see the link there. There's a live link there to a couple of pages, an excerpt from the book by Selwyn. Have a look at that. Selwyn is our core book for this module. That's a really good place to go and find out about stuff to do with technology and education. There's a reading activity there. Another preparatory thing here is there's an introduction here about the assignment for this module, and there's a little quiz here you can do. It's just a little Google Forms quiz. So I'm going to talk about the assignment today, and at some point have a go at this. It's really simple. It doesn't give you any marks or anything like that. It's just it's kind of a fun thing. Don't do it now. Do it when you've got 5 minutes and you've nothing else to do. Have a look at that quiz and do that. And the final preparatory activity here was a micro lecture to do with the themes that we're talking about this week, which is basically the definition of learning and the definition of technology. So there's a little lecture there for you to look at. One of the things I'm trying to do with this module is that because we are spending so much time online, that can become quite tiring, I think, just staring at a screen. I think we can all find that quite exhausting. So what I'm proposing to do with this module is to give you lots of small snippets that you can access in your own time. Don't spend hours on them, just watch it, think about it, and then step away from your screen. And then focus these sessions, the live sessions. These will be about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes long. And this is going to be the core stuff where we can actually discuss what these key issues are. So we're going to use the live time to discuss ideas and to clarify ideas. But what you need to do, what I'm asking you to do, is to engage with the other resources before the live activity or around the live activity. So you're building up this knowledge from looking at the other bits and pieces. And you'll see also for this week, I've given you an indication. That's where we are now, 2 o'clock start. Today, we're on Teams, you've made it. And this is what I'm going to be talking about today. So I'm going to just pick up any questions that you have and provide some responses. I'm going to ask you, or I will share some information about the sorts of things you've done preparing for this session today. We're going to talk a little bit collectively about COVID and the impact that it's had on schools and colleges and universities, We're going to talk a little bit about common uses of technology in the class, and I want to talk with you specifically about the module assessment. So that's the plan for today, for the next, roughly the next 45 minutes to an hour. Okay, let's see what we've got here then. We had lots of yeses. That was about accessing the shared screen. That was really helpful. Thank you. What do we do if we can't access Aula? Yes, thank you. Go to the website. Indeed. Faria, if you've got an ongoing problem with accessing Aula, what I can do is go back to the Aula team, because there's a Aula support network who will be able to intervene on your behalf and sort it all out. But you are definitely you're definitely one of the students who I gave access to Aula for. So from my end, I've done what I needed to do, but I'll check with the Aula team to make sure that they've given you the correct access to Aula as well. But in theory, Aula should have been in touch with you all. That was my understanding is that Aula would have contacted you by your university email and said, this is how Aula works. You're now on Aula. This is how to click into Aula. I think that's what would have happened. I didn't see that email, but that's what they told me they were going to do. But if any of you have, great. Thank you. That's really helpful. So if any of you didn't get that information, if you could just email me, and I will investigate and try and get that sorted out as soon as possible. I've given you lots of I've sent you via announcement lots of the stuff, lots of the information about today's session. So I'm trying to cover all bases. Oh, the page was blank. That's interesting. I think if you're in Aula, it should be fine. I don't know why that is, Rashida, but I will investigate. So Rashida and Faria, if you could just email me and just say that you were having some issues. Can I just ask a couple of you? So could I ask maybe two other volunteers? Can I ask Asala and Samia? Did you have similar problems with accessing Aula, or for you is Aula okay? Great, thank you, Asala. That's useful. So I can see it's not a problem for everybody. That's really good to hear. And Samir, it's okay. Great, fantastic. So okay, I can see that there were maybe a couple of people who've got problems. If you've got a problem with Aula, just drop me an email. I will put my email here in the chat feed if you're not aware of what it is yet. And that reminds me of something I've not done yet. Okay, that's my email. So if you've got a problem, just copy that and paste it into an LSBU email and email me. Just explain briefly what the problem is. That's great. What I should have done at the top of the session is have said hello and introduced myself, because I've realised that while I might have had very brief meetings with some of you last year, most of you won't have met me before. So my name is Andrew Reed. I am the head of the Division of Education, and you know that our division, the Division of Education, we've got undergraduate programs like your program, the Ed Studies non-work-based routes. We've got that program. We've got the work-based route. We have the top-up, which is the level 6 one-year program. We have a PGCE course for people who are postgraduates who want to train to be qualified teachers. We have MA programs. We have a doctorate program. We have some things called PG certs, which are short courses. And so all of those various programs, courses are part of the education division's portfolio, and that's the division that I'm in charge of. So I'm the head of the division, but I'm also module leader for this module, iTech, as well as module leader for some modules in your third year. For example, the project, which is your dissertation module, which is what you're going to do next year, and assessment in education, which is another module that you will do in your third year. So very warm welcome. My room is V207 in K2, but like most of us, I'm not there very much at the moment because of social distancing. So if you want to get in touch, please send me an email to that email address. reada3@lsbu.ac.uk. That's the best way to contact me. If you'll see on my signature on emails, there will be a phone number, but I'm not picking up that phone because it's in my office. So, and I'm not in my office. So if you've got something that you need to ask me, please email me at reada3@lsbu.ac.uk. Or you could always ask me questions via the Padlet, and I will send you links to the Padlet as well, so you know what's going on. Okay, so it's a little bit about me. Now, I think it would be useful to talk about the assignment, because I think that's probably something that you'd also all like to know a little bit about, and some of you will already have read about the assignment and may have some questions, and some of you may not have read about the assignment, and it would be useful to talk about the assignment now. So I'm going to go back to the Aula page where the assignment information is. So I'm back in Aula again. Okay, so if you look at the pre-live session entries, in pre-live session preparation number 2, there is information about the iTech assignment. It's just here. And what I'm going to do now, and I hope this works, is I'm going to open this using this arrow here, and that will open it in a new tab. And I'm pretty sure you can still see that now. So I've opened a new tab. I know that you'll tell me if you can't see it. I'll hear somebody will shout. So this is the module assessment for this module iTech. Now, it's actually pretty straightforward what you've got to do, but you have some choices to make. So the thing that makes this module interesting and perhaps a little more complex is that you can choose. So what the outline of the module states is that it's a portfolio of 3,000 words. So that's what you're submitting. But you can choose what you submit, and you've got a choice between a choice of 2 types of assessment. So you've got an essay, and that's the title of the essay, How Technology Contributes to Learning. It's pretty broad, isn't it? So you could write a 3,000 word essay. That's one of your options. Or you could write a series of journal entries. I've said blog posts there. Blog posts are very much like, for our purposes, are very much like journal entries. So imagine journal entries, a series of journal entries reflecting on how technology contributes to learning, drawing on the content of a range of module sessions. So you could write an essay that's 3,000 words long, or you could write a series of journal entries totaling 3,000 words. So let's put that into some context. We've got, let's say you were to write 7 journal entries, and you wrote 7 journal entries of approximately 400 to 500 words per journal entry. That will take you to your 3,000 words. Okay? So that's a way of thinking about it. You could do either the essay or the journal entries, depending on what fits your style best. Or, and this is the bit where it gets interesting, you could write a combination, you could submit a combination of an essay and journal entries. The expectation of that is that the minimum of one of those components, so the essay is one component, the journal entries is another component, the minimum word count for one of those components is 1,000 words. So you could write 1,000 words of journal entries and a 2,000 word essay. You could write 2,000 words of journal entries and a 1,000 word essay. You could write 1,500 words of an essay and 1,500 words of journal entries, or simply a 3,000 word essay or 3,000 words of journal entries. Lots of choices. I'm going to stop there and open it up for questions, because I think that sometimes giving choices makes things more complicated. Does that make sense? Has anyone got any questions particularly about that? Is the sense that that's no, great, good, good, that's fabulous. How would we put it in general? That's a great question, Alia. I'll come back to that. Sorry, did you say 1,500 words for essay? Yes, you can. So Asha, you could write 1,500 words for the essay, and then you would need to write 1,500 words of journal entries. Okay? You've got to have a total of 3,000 words. So you could have 1,500 words in the essay, and therefore that would leave you with 1,500 words of journal entries. Or if you were to write a 3,000 word essay, you're sorted. Or you could write 3,000 words of journal entries and you're sorted. Yeah, Imogen and Alia and Divine, I'll pick up your questions about what do I mean by a journal. I'll do that in a moment. Yeah, Shanjida, yeah, very much so. Your journals will be based on each session and your thoughts on it. That's a really good way of thinking about it. So at the end of this session, when I'm talking through the content of this session, I'll make some suggestions about what you might write a journal entry on. Yeah, Anish, don't worry too much about how submission works at the moment. I mean, I can explain it now, but it's a way off. So don't worry about that too urgently. Yeah, Farah, yes. The journal is based around your reflections. It's when I say journal, what I'm talking about is a reflective journal. If you like, it's a little bit like a personal diary. So you would be reflecting on, for example, your understanding of the use of technology in education, but you would be backing up your reflections with links to literature. So to pick up the point there from Unesa, Uni, is that right? And Uni, is it uni or uni? Is it uni like the beginning of university, or is it uni? I know it's a nickname. Uni. Okay, thanks. So uni, yeah. Well, that's an interesting point. Is it more informal and an essay more formal? I guess the big difference for me would be an essay would have an essay structure. So you would have very much in an essay structure, you'd have some kind of introduction, and you would have a set of paragraphs that would be presenting a particular argument, and you would have a conclusion. That's how an essay works. If you are writing, if you're writing journal entries, there doesn't need to be any particular connection between one journal entry and the next journal entry. It doesn't have to have that that structure that runs all the way through. That's the main difference. So it's not that one is very formal and the other is very informal. It's about the structure. So if you feel confident with organizing your ideas in a coherent essay structure, essays work for you. If you are confident with writing reflectively, using literature, but not necessarily linking one idea to the next idea, then the journal entries would work more effectively. Okay, let me go and pick up some more questions. I'm glad you're asking these questions. These are really useful. I'm just going to go back a little bit. So just back to Anish, your point about deciding to do both. It's kind of up to you. You could either submit them as two separate files, or you could put your journal entries and then your essay in the same document and submit that as a single file. That would work for me. To be honest, that would work more simply for me. Yep, Fahri, I've picked up your point about your thoughts there. Make sure that you've got literature in your journal entries as well as in the essay. On that. Nihar, yes, so we're working on the plus minus 10% theory here. So if it's a 3,000 word word count, so that would take, that's 2,700 words up to 3,300 words is your word count overall. I've got a little bit more to tell you about word count in a moment, so bear with me. I guess the thing with word counts to be aware of is that it's not a deal breaker if you were to write less than 2,700 words, but the problem would be that it's likely that you wouldn't have enough substance in your submission to get a really good mark with your submission. What I'm thinking is that by writing 2,700 words to 3,000 words in total, there's enough substance in your assignment to get a really good mark. If you end up writing, quite a short essay, it's likely to get a lower mark, not simply because you haven't written the right number of words, but because you haven't got enough space to write in sufficient depth. Shanjita, can we have as many journals as we want, as long as yeah, kind of. I mean, I would expect you to try and get a fairly balanced approach to writing your journal entries. So if you were to write 6 journal entries, each one was about 500 words, or 7 journal entries of sort of 400 or 450 words, that would make sense. Fahir, it's up to you. If you prefer to write an essay, write an essay. Yeah, I'm going to do that now, Andrea. I'm about to embark on that next session, that next explanation. Good question. I'll come to that, Andrew, in a moment. Just to pick up these last few questions here. Shanjita, what would be the minimum maximum amount of journals we could do? Well, I would suggest you've got to think about your word count a little bit. So I suppose you could write a 2,000 word essay and maybe do 3 journal entries. I think that would just about work. So that would give you about 300 to 350 words per journal entry. That seems reasonable. Yeah, Honey, I'll pick up that question now when I'm in the same response to Andrea's question. Great, let's go back to the next bit of the assignment, because this is needs a bit of clarification. So I've talked about that first page. Okay, you have 2 hand-ins. Okay, basically this module has 2 courseworks. So the first one is about drafts. It's about drafting your work. Okay, so you are going to hand in some stuff by the 2nd of November. That's the week after our reading week, the Monday after the reading week. Okay, so you're going to so if you've decided to just write journal entries, you could just hand in a couple of journal entries with a word count of up to 900 words. Okay. If you have decided just to do the essay, you could hand in an essay plan and some drafted paragraphs of your essay up to 900 words. And I'm going to give you feedback at that point. I'm going to give you a grade. It says 30% weighting, so you will get a grade out of 100, but that mark will only carry 30% of your final mark. So you'll get some feedback from me on what the strengths of your writing are and what you need to do to further improve your writing. You'll get that You'll get that feedback in November. Okay, so that's the first element, that's the drafting bit, the practice bit. And then in January, you'll write the rest of it. So you can think about the January submission in two different ways. You could simply carry on. So you could take those first journal entries you've done and carry on that piece of writing, or take those opening paragraphs of the essay and carry on. But I'm looking for an additional 2,100 words for that 4th of January hand-in. So that's, if you like, that's the whole piece. You've taken those drafted journal entries, maybe you've revised them, you've improved them, and you've added, so you've got a total submission of 3,000 words. When we put those two submissions together, and that's coming in on the 4th of January, and that's the one that carries the most weight, the 70% weighting. The reason why we've done it like this is because what happened last year is that a number of the students last year left the submission very, very late and found it very difficult to organise their ideas because they submitted very, very late. What I want to do this year is to get you thinking about your ideas early so that you can revise your ideas, improve the way you articulate your ideas, add additional literature if you need to add additional literature, so that when you come to the January hand-in, you're really buzzing. That's the plan. Let me look at some questions here about that. Alia, can we just not submit it all on the 2nd of November? I suppose what you could do, Alia, is you could write the whole thing by the 2nd of November and then just submit part of it for some feedback. So it would work as a piece of formative feedback for you. You get a mark, and then you could use your feedback to improve the bit that you didn't submit. So in a way, that would work doubly well for you. We wouldn't have covered all the sessions by it, so there'll be some more input from me after the 2nd of November. So you could do, but I think it would make more sense to me for you to, if you like, write the whole thing, but submit only the first bit of it, and then I can give you some feedback on that. So you could then improve the second bit for the January hand-in. And don't forget, the January hand-in date, that's your deadline. So there's nothing stopping you from handing in the beginning of December, for example, the middle of December. You don't have to hand in at the last possible opportunity. You can hand in sooner than that. I'd encourage you to think about handing in sooner than that. You could hand in, just imagine it, you could hand in early December and have the Christmas holiday free, just to relax. I know that Christmas is cancelled this year, but you know what I mean. You'd have the space there to kind of step back from academic work. Very good question, Neha. No, it wouldn't, because the submission window would not count what you submitted for the first opportunity. Turnitin is quite clever. What it does is it ignores the stuff that you have submitted for the same module. Because what happens is if you have to do, for example, a resubmission for a module, Turnitin works for that, and that stops you. The mechanism has a way of discounting, not counting your work, your previously submitted work for the same module. So Neha, don't worry about that. Neha, yeah, thank you. It is. Eduarda, have you got access to Aula? It is there. Let me go and... Yeah, it's there. Let me just show you where it is. It's it might not be in the most obvious place, to be honest. It might be my... let me see where I put it. Materials, resources, there. So if you go to the resources, and there you go. It's just a hyperlink there to the module reading list there. And I've made sure that all of the readings of the module are available as electronic documents. So you'll be able to access them all from the comfort of your own home, or if you're working in a, you know, an internet cafe or something like that, you can access that stuff from home. Question there from Nicole, can we send our draft in November, get the feedback? Yes, you can, Nicole. I mean, that's an interesting way of thinking about it. You can send, so what I could do, you could send your whole draft in November, but you wouldn't have had the full input from the module. That's the thing to think about. So that's why I'm suggesting a partial draft that you send. You could send more, and then I could give you feedback on the whole thing. That would be absolutely fine. What I would do is I would only look at about 900 words of your draft in November. That seems to be the fair way of doing it. So I'm saying that's a 900 word hand in. So Nicole, if you were to send in the 3,000 word essay in November, I would look at 900 words and give you some feedback which you could apply to the whole thing, and then obviously improve that work and hand in the rest of it in, hand in the revised piece of work in January. Yeah, that's correct. Either way, the first hand in November would only equate to 30% of your grade, basically. Yeah, I'll show you how that works in a moment, Fahia. These split grades are sometimes quite complicated, and I'll just walk you through how that works in a moment. Give me a moment just to pick up the other questions. Chimer, can you give me some advice on how to pronounce your name? I'm sorry. Shimer. Is that right? Shimer, I'm sorry. I completely got it completely wrong. Shimer. Does the content of our writing have to be on? No. Does it have to be on one type of technology? No, not at all. You could choose, really good question. I mean, you could use a range of different technologies that are used in the classroom and talk about how they support learning. And that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about during this module. There are lots of different types of technology, and lots of you have already referred to them in your introductions. So you've talked about, mobile phones, video, Twitter, PCs, Padlets, iPads, etc. So your thoughts about the impact of technology could focus on one particular technology or lots of different technologies. That's very much up to you. Like the reading we have had to do was mainly about textbooks, or yeah, so multiple types of technology is fine. Can the essay have both the pros and cons? Absolutely. Let's just go back to the let me just go back to the question again, just to make it really clear. So here we go. If you're writing the essay, so your essay title is How Technology Contributes to Learning. So as part of that, you could look at the positive impact of technology, and you could also explore the negative impact of technology. In your journal entries, you could look at the positive impact of technology on learning and negative impact of technology on learning. That's up to you. So that's a good way of thinking in a more critical way about technology. I guess, Shaima, what you've really raised there is a really important question about technology. This module is not about saying technology is really brilliant and everything we do with technology is fantastic. This is we're thinking critically about the impact of technology. We are now living, because of COVID, we're having to depend on technology. We're working in this way through Teams, we're working in online ways. This is shifting the way we're having to work. And I'm not in any way saying technology is brilliant or technology is perfect. I'm saying technology is something we have to use, or we appear to have to use, and there will be pros and cons. I mean, I'm really happy for you to. I would encourage you to think in a more critical way about technology, not simply to accept that technology is a brilliant thing, but to challenge the use of technology. Does it, are there some circumstances in which it does work effectively? Are there some circumstances in which technology is not, doesn't support learners' needs? Shaim, does that answer your question? Cool. Thank you. Andrea, so if we choose an essay of 2,000 words and journal entries of 1,000 words, do we have to submit 900 words in total from both of them? What I'm encouraging you to do, Andrea, is to submit your early efforts for both elements. So if you've chosen to do the essay and the journal entries, it makes sense to me to submit the beginning of your working on both of those elements, so I can give you some feedback on the essay and some feedback on the journal entries. That's my thinking. Got that. Asala, how would we submit it on Turnitin if we aren't using Moodle? Good question. That's a question I've raised with the Owler team, and the Owler team are just sorting out the way that we can submit on Turnitin through Owler. So that's a really good question, Asala. That's one I've raised with the Owler team, because don't forget, we're piloting this. We're trying to work out what the problems is, and that was an issue that I was concerned about. So we've taken that back to Owler, and they are looking at sorting out submission through Turnitin via Owler. If we can't resolve that, we will use Moodle purely for the purposes of submitting, but I will sort that out ASAP. Asher, I've picked up that answer there. So it is a Turnitin issue. Do we send our references with our draft? Yes, please, Rashid. That would be really useful, because I would like to give you some feedback on your referencing as well. So it's all good practice, it's good. This is a really good opportunity. You're going to be getting some feedback, some formative feedback on your writing, on your work really early, and that will give you a good chance to revise your approaches and get them sorted out for the submission in January. Cheryl, I can see that answer there. Was that? I can't see what. I can't see what's that. That is a response to. Cheryl, I don't quite understand that answer, but if that's all clear, that's great. Okay. Good. Sorry. Understood. Yeah, Cheryl, you're spot on. Thank you. You're absolutely right. Yes, the reference list does not count in the word count. Same rules as for any other assignment. So where you quote other authors, those quotes count in the word count. The citation, that's the thing that you put in the brackets after the quote. So where you say who the author is and the date of the year of publication and the page number, counts in the word count. The only thing that doesn't count in the word count is the reference list. Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. That's very clear. Great. Okay, I'm just going to go back to our space here. Make sure I'm covering everything that I said I was going to cover. So in the live session, we've talked about. I thought that would take some time just to talk about the assignment. Course structure, we are going to be working on Teams for live sessions, and we're going to be working through Owler regularly. You'll notice there are two things on Owler. There's this thing called community, and we can have discussions through community here. So I had a couple of comments already which I've responded to. So you can ask me questions through community. That works very well. And you've got journey. So community is kind of your discussion framework here, and journey is the structure of the course. and we're in week 1 at the moment. So that's one thing to kind of be aware of and how that works. Back into the live session. That's how that works. Let's have a think about this. So my question here was, the COVID pandemic has had a significant impact on how schools, colleges and universities organise teaching. So your own experience in your first year and now in your second year is evidence of this. So you started off your first year coming up onto campus, having lectures in lecture halls and seminars in seminar rooms, and possibly only using online learning to access things on Moodle, possibly. So the question here, and this could be your first journal entry. What changes from forced remote teaching? So we've been forced to work in this way because of social distancing. Are there some aspects of this which would actually be worth holding on to? Just because one day COVID social distancing is going to stop. This seems like the new normal now, but this isn't going to go on forever. So is there something about the way we're working now which we should really think about holding on to? I'm going to give you some time to think about this. I'm just going to give some attention to the dog. I'll talk about the dog in a moment, and just want you to think about that question. So what could we hang on to? Right, so the question was, we are forced to work remotely because of COVID-19. Okay, we've got these restrictions. We've heard the Prime Minister. He's encouraging us to keep going as well as we can, but we've got social distancing regulations. I was in university on campus last week doing induction with new first years. Very few first years came to on-campus induction. I had a very big lecture hall, and I had 3 students there, all wearing masks, and I had to wear a visor. So we were all very spread out, and it was much harder to have a conversation with them in a massive lecture theatre, all socially distancing, all wearing masks, than it is for me to have a conversation with you now, because we don't have to wear masks because we're all working online. So the question I'm asking you to think about is, are there some things that have happened as a consequence of COVID-19 and the expectations of social distancing that actually we want to hold on to? Even once we go back to the normal, we go back to working on campus again, is there stuff that we should really stick with? Let's have a look. Great, good answers. Here we go. So Andrea, one of the things that we could keep is Q&A sessions from time to time. I felt like university, sometimes people are afraid to ask questions and online. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, Andrea. Andrea, is it Andrea Maria or just Andrea? Andrea, okay, thank you. I think that's a really, really interesting point. One thing I have found, I've been working with the PGCE, we have the postgraduate teacher training course, and they started on the 7th of September. And we've been running sessions like this with them since the 7th of September. And what would usually happen is we'd deliver in a lecture theatre, and everyone comes into the lecture theatre. You've got your 60 students in a lecture theatre, and you say, blah, 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 blah. And you say, has anyone got any questions? And nobody has any questions. But when you work in this setting, and I've noticed it here today, I say, has anyone got any questions? And suddenly there are lots of questions, and there's maybe something about working online which changes confidence. Is it about confidence, or is it about how you feel about the value of your voice, or is it because you can type rather than what's going on there? Have you got any thoughts about that? Yeah, add it in the essay, absolutely. But what you want to do, Nihar, is think about, is that an opinion? So this is a thing to be careful about now with this sort of discussion we're having now. Is that an opinion, or is that something you can back up with some literature to back up that thinking. So what is it about this scenario, this working online, that enables people to feel more confident? Is it about confidence? I'm using the word confidence without really knowing that that's what you're thinking. Is this about confidence, or is this just about having the tools, and maybe we're more used to these tools for asking questions? But have a think about that. Yes, recording. Recording. This is Oluwatobi. Oluwatobi. Toby's for uh, in brief. Olu. Toby. Toby. Yes, recording live sessions should be added when we are back to normal. It gives learners. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Now, the challenge of that is that, I mean, the beauty of something like Teams is it's so set up to record. It's just because it's online already, the recording facility is really straightforward. So the challenge going back into the classroom is how you make those live sessions recordable. But that's an interesting point, Toby. I think that's really valid. Um, in general, keeping teams may open up job opportunities for people who aren't. Yeah, I think Elisa. Long I or short I? This is Elisa. Elisa, thank you. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think a point that I will make throughout this module, and I think you've picked up very perceptively, Elisa, there, is that the world of work into which you are already beginning to enter, and once you are graduates, you'll continue entering in at that world of work. And that world of work might be to do with working in schools and educational settings, but when you're a graduate, the world will open up to you. Your graduate employment opportunities will be all over the place. And I wonder now, as a consequence of COVID-19 and coronavirus, whether actually the workplaces will begin to change. And the idea of people having to travel into offices to attend meetings and to work is going to sort of shift a little bit now, because actually, it's not all fallen apart. Businesses are still running, offices are still running, but people haven't got to make that journey into the office anymore, because we've worked out that we can sort of manage with working at distance, working remotely. So I think that's a really interesting point, Elisa, about not only about people with disabilities or with access challenges, but perhaps for everybody, the flexibility that working online gives us is something which we might continue to cherish and hold on to. Samir, yeah, while online learning may be easier because there's still anonymity, because interesting, because no one can see your face. But the lack of accessibility, yeah, I think very, very good points there. So you've got the issue there from Samir, a couple of really valid points there. One of them is that perhaps I would expand on that a little bit, Samir. Again, think about this further. So you've got the anonymity of somebody not hearing your voice and not hearing you speak. I think what you've also got is, if you are less confident about the question that you want to ask, using something like chat means you can construct the thing that you want to say very carefully. You can edit it, you can get it right, you can be confident about it, and then you press the enter key and you send your message. So you have the time there to give the thing that you want to say more precision, more care, and perhaps that gives the person more confidence. Yeah, good point, Andrew. You've picked up Andrea. You picking up the point about social anxiety. Yeah, absolutely. Not people not staring, and there's a lot of social anxiety. I'm very conscious that social anxiety has an immense impact on lots of people. I think it's growing, particularly with younger people, and I think potentially working online. I don't think it gets rid of it. Obviously, it doesn't take social anxiety away, um, but it does mean that there's a way of managing the situation. I guess the thing to think about there is if you are somebody who is dealing with social anxiety, something like Teams offers a solution, offers a way of dealing with this kind of scenario. But then the challenge is, how do you actually, in practical terms, overcome social anxiety? Because in a way, you have limited opportunities to kind of practice being in spaces with other people. So there may be a kind of, that might be a positive and a negative there, perhaps. Nihad, yeah, absolutely. The digital divide, that's a really good point. I think it was Sam here that raised it. Lack of accessibility, absolutely. And then you've re-emphasized that, Neha, you've re-emphasized that, talking about the idea of the digital divide. Really, really important questions. When we talk about the idea of digital natives, there's a bit of a reading about that next week. The idea that young people today, this is an assumption. The idea that young people today, because they are so immersed in digital technology, that they're super confident with all of these digital things. And there's an assumption about that. That might not be true. And there's also a really big question about accessibility. And because of the way that digital access is dispersed around the country, people in different cities, different regions, different parts of cities have very, very different levels of access to even their neighbours because of the digital divide. So I think that's a really important point you make there. Some here, like the internet and laptops and phones, are a privilege that while it's normal for us, yeah, very valid point there. Absolutely. Questions about access to decent technology, access to a good internet signal, as simple as that. Something as simple as having a secure internet signal is not something that everybody is able to take advantage of. Yeah, thanks, Fire. It is, Amisha, the assignment is on Moodle. Let's go and have a quick look at that. Don't get too carried away straight away with submitting things. But if you go into materials, if you go to assignments, there you go. You've got these two elements here. But they are hidden at the moment because I'm still working with Aula to look at Turnitin handing. So they are there. But the information, Maya, that you need there is here. There you go. There's the information there. Somebody's accidentally turned on their microphone, so we can hear doors opening and all sorts of excitement like that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Sammy, a very valid point there. Yeah, correct. Thank you, Uni. It's on Aula. Has he already spoken on how we turn in our work? Has he? Who are you talking about, Nazra? The cat's grandma? Yes. He has already spoken a little bit about it. So Nazra, what we're doing is I am in consultation with Aula. The intention is that we will use Turnitin and you will access Turnitin through Aula, but Aula are just sorting out that link. So don't worry about that yet, and don't worry, it's not going to be a problem. I'll give you plenty of warning about how we're going to do that. Thanks. 10 out of 10, Asala, spot on. Yeah, that's interesting. Uni, you say it also could be about comfort in the environment. So that's a really interesting point, isn't it? So maybe because you are in your own, I'm assuming for most of you are at home, perhaps that is a place that feels more, comfortable. Your familiar surroundings, etc. Neha, thank you, Neha. Do we all have a login for Aula? Yeah, earlier in this session, I asked if anybody does not have a login for Aula, if you email me at READ, I'll put my address in here again, just so that you can find it, 3@lsbu.ac.uk. If you email me, if you've got a problem, I can look into if there are problems with logging into Aula. Yeah, thank you both, Hani and Nasra, that's really helpful. Thank you, Asala. Fatima, yes, I will provide a criteria sheet. I'm sorry if I've not done that already, I will do that. Yeah, let's talk about journal entries. So, you're going to be writing journal entries for another module actually this year, for the module EC, which is Equality, Culture and Citizenship. So it'll be useful for us to think about journal entries. So let's think about how I can do this most effectively. Let me work out, I'm going to do a little bit of, I'm going to try and do something crafty here. Let's see if I can do this successfully. Just give me a moment. Don't give up on me. Bear with me. Right. Oops, that's a bit big. Okay, let's go back into Teams again. I'm going to share. Okay. All right, I'm in Word now. So how are you going to write out your journal? So I would suggest what you do is, if you were writing a reflection on today's session, give it a title, session 1. Usually I would say it's good practice to add the date. So today is 24th of September 2020, or you could write 24/09/2020. Either of those is okay, either or, yeah. So that's your title. Okay, that's the beginning. And then, well, why don't you take this question here that I've been asking you now about the difference, whether we would take some of this stuff that we are using now as a consequence of social distancing, and we take that into, back to the world once the coronavirus has been defeated. So you could you could explain briefly, we were asked about, or we discussed, and then you could make some, the key points were. Okay, so these are just sentences, sentence openings, and then because it's a journal, you can write from your own perspective. So for me, or from my point of view, my perspective, or my feeling is that. Okay, so you're writing personally about how you feel about the challenges and the sorts of things that we might hang on to once we return to on-campus learning. But what you need to add into this is some literature. So you've got to do some reading as well. So you could look at somebody like Selwyn, which is one of our core readings. So Selwyn, and we're looking at I think it's the 20, it's not, I think it might be 2014. I'll check the date before I leave. 2014 suggests that. So you could look at Selwyn and see what Selwyn argues about the advantages of working online. So you're bringing the literature in to support the points that you're making when you're writing your own reflections. Does that make sense? Great. So it's a kind of, it's a bit of a mixture. So you're writing personally, you're writing your personal perspectives, but you've also got to bring in the literature because this is level 5. You can't get away with just writing your personal perspectives. You have to have something from the literature to back up your thinking. If I go back to the Owler site here, so for example, if you go into the where have I put it now? In the resources here, if you go onto the resources, you go into the Moodle list, the reading list here. That should take you to the reading list. There you go, you're straight in there. And you can see there are all of these things. Oh, it's 2011 is the online version. So you've got Selwyn, that's the core book. So Selwyn will have some things to say about this. You could have a look at the book by Leask, for example. So Leask will have some stuff about the benefits of working online. And you can quote from those authors as part of your reflection. So that's sort of beginning to fit together how you could construct that. So you've got to have the literature in, but it's all very, very accessible. Yeah, Shanjida, the issue here is you could use a similar structure for the essay, but the point I'm trying to make about an essay being different is an essay. So with your journal entries, each week we'll talk about some stuff, and those things, whilst they are all going to be about technology, I'm not going to give you a structure for, I'm not going to take one idea in one week and then develop that a little bit more the next week and then develop that a little bit more the next week. You may see that line happening, but I'm not going to, that's not going to be my principal objective. There are going to be some issues we're going to talk in week 1, some different kind of issues we'll talk about in week 2. So you could reflect on each week's comment, but those reflections might not be very clearly linked together. If you're writing an essay, you're going to have an introduction, and then each paragraph will lead logically onto the next paragraph. There will be a thread running through your essay, linking the paragraph 1 to paragraph 2 to paragraph 3 to paragraph 4. So the structure of an essay has got to have something that kind of glues it all together. And that's different from writing a journal entry, a journal entry, a journal entry, a journal entry. Shadija, okay. So the essay will most likely be based on, yeah, I mean, you might have a kind of single core idea in your essay, which runs all the way through. When writing the journal essay and quoting authors, do we have to include a mixture of paraphrasing and direct quotes, or can we just use direct quotes? I would recommend you use a mixture of paraphrase or summary. Can I suggest summary is better than paraphrase? So you're summarizing the author's the key ideas, and you are using a mixture of summary and direct quotes. The danger with paraphrasing is you kind of get this long quote by an author, and then you change a couple of words in the middle to try and make it a bit different, and that never works. It becomes a little bit nonsensical, and it probably ends up being highlighted by a similarity checker. So a much better way to do it is to read what the author's got to say, summarize what the author is saying in a, so you read a paragraph, summarize the key idea, and maybe use a couple of direct quotes to clarify. So a mixture there. Okay, I'm really conscious that I've been going on now for just over an hour. I'm just going to go back briefly to this information, just to check I've covered everything I promised to cover. So we've talked a little bit about that. We didn't really talk about outputs. I think probably we'll move on from that. We've talked about that discussion point there. I think that was really useful. Common uses of technology in the classroom. Let's do that briefly, and then what I will do is just open this up for more questions and give you an opportunity to leave, because I think my feeling is that sort of remaining focused in a meeting like this for much more than an hour will become exhausting. And I guess you are all spending an awful lot of time looking at screens at the moment. So I think for us to maintain the quality, I don't want to go on much longer with all of us for much more than this, but let's quickly talk about the types of technology used in the classroom. What sort of technology have you seen used in the classroom? Would you like to make some suggestions in the chat feed? So classroom technology, whether primary, so we've got access to material online. Yep, smart boards, so interactive boards in the classroom. Sometimes called IWBs, interactive whiteboards. Very good. The projector, very good indeed. iPads, excellent. Laptops, very good. Reading tablets, very good. Yeah, textbooks, that's a really interesting point. Shema, you make a really good point there, because textbooks, if you've looked at the definition of technology that I've used elsewhere, a textbook is arguably a type of technology. It's obviously not if it's online or in on something like a tablet, it becomes digital technology. But actually, the textbook is something that potentially makes our life easier, which is what technology does. Computers, the whiteboard, excellent. Lots of ideas there. Very good. Have you seen things like those bee boxes? Those they're like computerized robots in the shape of a beetle, and you can type a code into the system, and it maps out a journey around the classroom. Visualizers, very good indeed. Yep, excellent. What about mathematics? Technology used in maths? Excellent. Calculators, very good. What about technology used in science lessons? VLE, very good indeed. Lots of schools have Moodle and things like that as well. Telescopes, very good. Yeah. There's lots of stuff used in science lessons today around using very good imaging microscopes. Lots of stuff going on at the moment about using things like sensors for measuring the changing temperature of something over time. Games on the smart boards, absolutely. There's lots of stuff. We'll talk about this in a couple of weeks about the idea of the type of. Thank you. Yep, thermometers, uni, absolutely. There's some. We'll look at the different sorts of programs that students can use. So, for example, games involve like adventure games used in the classroom, and simple games where when you type in the answer, and if it's correct, you get a kind of fireworks, and if it's incorrect, you get a kind of so you get different kind of responses from the computer. Chromebooks, absolutely, divine. So stretching the possibilities, so cheaper than often cheaper. I know that sometimes they're more expensive, but generally cheaper than standard books because they have less storage capacity. Yeah, the example of the pencil is one. I think probably we need to be. I think you're correct. I think we should be thoughtful about when you're writing about this stuff. Be thoughtful about whether you're talking about technology generally. So I would argue that the pencil is technology, or whether we're focusing on digital technology. So that's things like the calculator, the computer, the iPad, the interactive whiteboard, the Chromebook, etc., etc. And cameras would fall in with that within that point there again into digital technology, particularly if you're using digital cameras. Printers, absolutely, same thing. Hearing aids, absolutely. I mean that's kind of questions around how you improve access by things like the use of hearing aids, visual things to help students with visual impairment, etc., etc. Microphones, very good. Excellent. Good. That's smashing. Thank you. Lots of good ideas there. So you're already thinking about all the types of digital technologies. Yeah, I mean, I would, Faria, that's a really good question. in principle, this module focuses on digital technology rather than technology in general, because technology in general takes us into such a wide field. And actually what I want us to do is have a bit more focus on digital technology. So thinking about, when I say the impact of technology, what I mean is the impact of digital technology. For some reason, the word digital is one that I always found very difficult to pronounce. Okay, very good. So what I suggest we do now is I'm going to remain online all the way through until 4 o'clock. I'm happy. I think that's our content covered for this week, but I'm really happy to remain here. If you want to stay here and ask questions, please do so. If you have reached your digital capacity now, you are more than welcome to leave. But if you want to hang around and listen to discussions, that's absolutely fine. If you want to ask me individual questions, that's absolutely fine. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch off the recording, and everything that happens from now will not be part of the recording. So if you want to ask me something individually, if you want to turn on your microphone, that won't be picked up. So I'm now turning off the recording.